Sawadee khab tukon, and welcome back to BL After Credits, a podcast where we deep dive into BL series, what they teach us beyond a simple love story. In the first episode, we talked about Love Upon a Time in relation to letting go. In this second episode, we're going to talk about Only Friends and Only Friends Dream On, and you're gonna have to stay till the end to know what today's lesson is going to be. Without further ado, let's go for the intro. This is probably going to be the only episode where I combine the two seasons of the same series together like this, because I usually think there is something different to take away from both, but when it comes to Only Friends and Only Friends Dream On, because the two seasons were so similar, I actually only had one thing that really came to my mind when I watched the series, so I just decided to combine them in one single episode. So I'm gonna first start with the synopsis and cast of the first season, and then I will do the same for the second season, although the plot is more or less the same, and I'll just precise like what the difference is between the two seasons. So in Only Friends, we follow the story of a friend group basically that has this sort of guest house hotel. I'm not really sure what it was exactly, I can't remember, but they had this sort of like big university project to do together, and as they started working on this project, problem arise. Problem arose, and basically it's not just about the project itself, but more so about the relationship that they had with each other. So originally it was a friend group, but slowly, like as more people join, it turns into this weird, like everyone sort of date each other one after another kind of situation. So yeah, I'm not gonna spoil much more because, as you know, this is not the goal of this section. But this is basically what the story is going to tell. It's about like navigating all those sort of relationships. And the second season sort of follows the same path, the same storyline, except that instead of a guest house hotel project, what they had was a play. They had to make this play, which is Romeo and Romeo, and it overall ends up in the same sort of situation with like everyone sort of like big tension, everyone sort of flirt with each other and some argue and stuff like this. I'm not gonna deep dive like too much into this, but yeah, this is basically what both seasons of this series are about. As for the cast, I'm pulling out my notes again because again I cannot remember the name. So for the first season, we have first Kanapan in the role of Send, Kaltung Tanawat in the role of Ray, Force Chiratapon in the role of Top, Book Kasidet in the role of Mew, Neotri in the role of Boston. You all know this one. I know you all know, even though you didn't watch the show, I'm pretty sure you know who Boston is. And the last one is Mark Paquin as Nick. And for the second season, we have Mix Sahapap for the role of Dean, Earth Pirapat in the role of Jack, Jos Wayar in the role of Arnold, Kawin Gaski in the role of Tua, Otanabun in the role of Rome, and finally Boom Tanaton in the role of Rafi. So basically, all the characters from the first season do make some appearance in the second season as well, so they are technically part of the cast, but they are not the main cast, you know what I mean. So this is it for the cast, and honestly it's a really good cast. Like both seasons had an amazing cast in my opinion. So even though the story is very, very messed up, I do advise that you check both seasons out because they are definitely worth it in terms of acting. That is all I'm going to say. As for the production, it is obviously a JMM TV series. You all recognize those actors if you know them. So you can. I'm not sure if it is still available on YouTube as of today because I know that they are taking down a lot of shows. And personally, in the country I'm in, I don't think it is available on YouTube simply because it was rated R19, I think. So yeah, this is basically it. But I know you can probably figure it out and find it somewhere on the internet. It is out there. It is out there. So that is it for the big introduction to Only Friends and Only Friends Dream On. Now we can dive into the review. So I'm not gonna lie, I've watched both seasons as they were airing, meaning I've watched Only Friends when it was airing back in 2023 and Only Friends Dream On when it was airing earlier this year. So it is still quite like a long time ago, especially for the first season, and I haven't watched them a second time before making this episode. So few details might skip my mind. I'm sorry about that. So I'm not gonna present you with like big details of the at least the visual story because I can remember much of like the plot and what happened, but in terms of like visual details I don't remember too much of it. I know that there was some very good scenes, but overall Only Friends and Only Friends Dream On, I mean, more so the first season, honestly, but Only Friends was not a drama that I remember to be impressive in terms of visual aspect, meaning the filming, the editing, the framing, it was good, but it was not like outstanding. It was very basic. It was what you would expect from a good quality series, nothing more, nothing less. So it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like exceptionally good. So for that is for the technical aspect of the first season. As I said, because it's been so long since I watched it, I cannot recall any like very specific details about it. The second season though had some very good visual details. So one thing I really liked in the second season was about the editing. At first it was a bit confusing. I wasn't really sure where they were going with it, but as the story unfolded, it just sort of started making sense and just become a part of the series. So what they did, if you haven't watched the series, this is going to be a spoiler, but basically what they did is that you have those regular story like drama kind of filming, and then those would be like cut by interview style filming, meaning you have one actor sitting on a chair, like they also put this sort of like retro kind of camera TV effect on those sections, and the character would just talk as if it was being interviewed about like their life in the series, which I think was very interesting. This was a very creative additional point to the series because originally, as I said, since the plot of the series and like all the relationships and everything is so messed up, you don't find necessarily something artistic, something like very creative coming from it. So the way they added this creativity in the editing was honestly quite surprising and also impressive in my opinion. In that sense, the second season was more impressive than the first one, for sure. But one thing I also liked, at first it was very confusing. At first it was almost disturbing, and it felt like it felt like it was not part of the drama, but uh, like on top of those interview style sections, there were also some transition that were a bit specific. They would just put a bunch of like images all together and have this like sort of shooting, like camera shooting sound effect behind it. And this put together sort of like guide us through like to the next like scene, sort of what the next story like part of the episode is going to be about. And at first the thing is they did not precise, like of course they did not precise it because nobody is out there giving us like those kind of technical information about the series. But the thing is that some details about those images included text and stuff like this, which were all in Thai, so foreign audience could not easily understand. But basically all the images or most of the images that were like put out there in those sort of transition effect were meant to have little spoilers about the next part. That is how I understood it, because most of them, except for a few that has like food in it, except for those, most of those transition like photo shooting transition, I don't know how to call it, had those spoilers about the next part. So this was very interesting. At first I didn't like it. When I watched the first, I think 1 or 2 episode, I was like, this is a bit weird, it feels out of place. But then it's like as you go and you sort of like see the structure of the episode with like those very cutting transition and then the interview style, it's everything is meant to take you away from all the drama that is happening in the series. Basically, it sort of like takes you away. It sort of like puts a wall in between you and the story. And I think that is one point that is very interesting, because if you know me from Instagram and if you check my content, then you know that I made a series, like a content about the episode title of OnlyFriends Dream On, meaning OnlyFriends season 2. And those episode title made me realize something about the story, is that as the story goes, we follow both the characters as the character they are in the series, but we also follow the character they are in the play Romeo and Romeo, which I think was very interesting because it's sort of like this double-edged sword of a series. Like, in a sense, that is what OnlyFriend is. To me, it's like a very double-edged sword series. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else than me, but this is how I see it. And I think the editing is also meant to push that forward. So this is pretty much all I have to say about the technical part, which is already quite good considering the series. If you've watched it, I'm probably sure you wouldn't have thought of like all those kind of details to begin with, because you just focus on like all the drama and all the like messed up relationship that they all have. So it's honestly easy to miss all the sort of detail. But yeah, I sort of noticed them, and this is all I have to mention about it. So it was pretty low. I mean, not low standard, but it was very basic in the first season. The second season improved in terms of visual creativity, but in terms of plot, though, the first season was better. And I don't know if this will, like, if anybody will agree with me about this, but this is how I see it. Basically, when the first season came out, it was something new. First of all, it was something that nobody had done before. Meaning, so far, what the BL series that we've been having were about following one or multiple love story, but like each single one of them was doing their little thing on their own. You may have like a love triangle or something, but there was no series in which everybody sort of gets involved into one single weird dynamic like this. So there was this very rule breaking aspect to the first season of OnlyFriend, and this is why it got so popular back then, because everybody was going crazy over the ship being mixed up together. Like, at any given time, you could have like any of those actors end up together at one point. Like, that was something I appreciated back then, because although we knew the pairing, there was this sort of like uncertainty of who is going to end up with who, because at some point everything is just so messed up that you're like, okay, but wait, what if they don't end up together? What if the pairing is actually not ending up as the pairing? So this, I think, is what made the whole first season feel so tense and so impressive back then, because it was just something new. So far, we just had the pairing, the series, Endgame, and that's it. But OnlyFriend just sort of started questioning all of that altogether. And I feel like because it was also starting with a story of a group of friends, everybody could sort of relate, and then suddenly there is all this big drama happening. So everyone suddenly sort of gets involved in it, because you're like, wait, this is a story that is so close to me, but how come it, like, how did it become this messed up? At least that's how I saw it personally. I was like, how did they even end up in that situation? Like, although you follow the whole process, at some point everybody is just like doing their little thing out there, and you're like, how did we end up here? How did we end up here? So I think this was very interesting from the first season. The second season, on the other hand, did not have that much mixing up, and this is why I think it was sort of like not worse, like, because it's not like that bad, but there is a lot of like downgrade. I would say it lost a few points by not mixing up the pairing enough, meaning there was this sort of tension between Dean and Arnold, for example, because of the Romeo and Romeo play. But when they're in the forest and there is all that big scene about them, they were about to kiss, but they did not. And that is my point. That is my point. In OnlyFriends season 1, Boston and Top, you all know what they did in that car. We all saw that, right? So that is my point. In season 1, things were actually happening, which is why it led up to some drama. So it made sense to some extent. But the second season, it's more of like speculation of what could have happened leads to the drama. And this is like, this does not make sense because it did not happen. In the end, it did not happen. So nothing happened. Everybody should just be okay, right? So there is this sort of like forced drama pushed forward in the second season, which I did not really enjoy that much. And overall, I just feel like, yeah, a lot of what happened in the second season could have been avoided because it was just a lot of miscommunication and yeah, just a lot of like drama, big drama for nothing, in my opinion, compared to season one, especially because, like, if it was season two on its own, separately, maybe I would rate it differently. But because it is related to season one, obviously, we have to compare the two because it is part of one single universe. So there is this big difference between season one and season two. And in that aspect, I think that season one was way better because it really brought forward this tension. We could feel the tension because things were actually happening. And so as we saw them happen, we could already think like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Like, oh, like this guy, well, like who, like what is Ray or what is Mew going to think about what is happening right now? So because everything was actually happening, we could feel the tension. We could see the drama. We could see the drama coming. We could imagine what the other characters' reaction would be when they learn the truth. But in the second season, because nothing really happens, when they all have their sort of like emotional storm coming in, it feels a bit out of place because nothing actually happens. So it feels like they're getting worked out over nothing. Yeah, that's sort of how I saw it. And I know I'm not the only one, but probably there are some people who did not see it that way, which I also totally understand. We all have different opinion and we all have different ideas and interpretation and like reception, I'd say, of the story. So if you like the second season better, that is up to you. There is no like, this is not meant to like criticize or anything. I'm not here to push forward saying, oh, you should prefer season one. Like, you do you. Now, I have talked a bit about the technical part, but that also mixed up a little bit of the emotional part, obviously, because I just cannot talk about the plot of OnlyFriends without getting emotion involved, because this is just what this whole series is about. It's like about how, like, all this emotion, because they feel betrayed or because they love someone, everything sort of ends up like all mixed up like this. So it is just part of the story. You have to mention the emotion when it comes to OnlyFriend. It is a series that does not, like, you cannot just talk about like the technical parts of the plot without getting the emotions involved in it, in my opinion, at least. This is how I see it. But yeah, from what I recall, I know that I did not like OnlyFriends season one that much when it came out because it also included a lot of like NC scenes, which I'm not a big fan about. Like, of if you know me, you know that I'm not here for NC scenes. Like, I do like a very good one, but when it comes to like NC scenes every one or two episode, I'm not that much into it. I don't like it that much. So I recall that a part of me was like, okay, but isn't this series about just them making out every two episodes? That's how I saw it back then. But then as time passed by and I saw other series and I started thinking about OnlyFriends again, and I was like, maybe there was actually something more to the story than just this messed up situation. And this is why I ended up making this episode about the two seasons, because there is indeed something to take away from this series, right? So I did enjoy the second season a little bit, but because I honestly think that OnlyFriends is the kind of series that did not necessarily needed a second season. They made this second season because they hinted at a continuity in the story at the end of the first season, with Mix arriving to this guest house, which to some extent did not make sense, by the way, because in the second season, Mix is not in the guest house anymore. He's not like in that damn shared house. So I'm like, then why make the second season? Why is it here? Part of me was very, very like, found this choice very questionable because the second season did not even link up to where we left in season one. So I was like, okay, you just push forward the second season because you had probably no other idea. I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. You tell me. But this is my opinion. I'm like, maybe this series did not necessarily need a second season, and because it did not sort of connect as much as I expected it to the first season, except for the characters coming back into the story. But then again, we don't have any sort of definite relationship between the characters from season one and characters from season two, except that they are all like from the same university, I think. So to some extent, it's very random. I would say that the second season is very random in that aspect. Apart from that, I honestly don't have much to say about like sort of fan reaction to Only Friends because yeah, when like I think I really had a different opinion and a different eye on the series when I watched it compared to now. Because in the meantime, I also started making content about BL series on a more deeper level. So I started looking into symbolism, messages, like the dynamics, the plot holes, and stuff like this. So as I grew and developed this kind of content, it made me realize that that some series that I watched, I probably overlooked them quite a bit or quite a lot actually, and this is especially the case for Only Friends Dream On. Only Friends, I mean, sorry, season one. I'm so used to saying Only Friends Dream On for the past like few months. So yeah, back then I only saw it as like this very messed up kind of series where there is no definite plot except all of them ending up in like some drama. But after a few times, well, a few years actually, after a few years of reflection and the second season coming out as well, it made me realize that that was not the point of the series. That was not the point of Only Friends at all. And so this is why we are moving on to our last section about today's life lesson. So I know many of you might be wondering, what kind of life lesson can you possibly take from Only Friends and Only Friends Dream On, except to maybe not mess things up with your friends? But I promise you, this life lesson is actually very, very interesting. So 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago in the first episode with Love Upon a Time, we talked about letting go and like letting things in the past, healing, getting over things, forgiveness, all those kind of stuff. And this week we are going to talk about self-destruction, which is quite on the other side of the spectrum, but I think it is very important to talk about it. And I also think many people might relate to what I'm about to say in this section. So the reason why I chose to relate self-destruction to Only Friends and Only Friends Dream On, I mean, now that I say it, maybe it might seem obvious to you, because obviously it is quite obvious that each and every single one of the characters involved in any season, they are having an attitude and a personality that tends to go towards self-destruction. It's like almost a default setting in them. Like that's how I see it. It's almost like a default setting. Like whenever they have a chance to move on, to get happier, to just like go over like get over their past and just move on, start a new relationship, like, or I don't know, start again on good terms, they just go right into that wall of like self-destruction and self-sabotage. So I did not have a specific character or like couple in mind when I chose this theme for this episode and this series, because I believe it can really be linked to any character in any series, maybe season one or season two. I think each of these characters ended up at some point doing something that hurted themselves. And basically, like in the first episode, I also gave a little like sort of quotation that goes with the theme of letting go. So this week the theme would be that we are our own enemies. Sorry, this sentence is actually quite hard to pronounce, but we are our own enemies, and I feel like Only Friends and Only Friends Dream On embody this so well. So the way I see it is that, especially now that I think about it, actually you could relate it more specifically to Mew and Top in the first season. But really, if you think about it a bit further, it is applicable to any character and any relationship of the series. Like, may it be friendship, may it be romantic relationship or whatever else relationship there is in the series, because I honestly cannot remember. With all this mixing up, I cannot remember who is who and who is what to who, and so on and so forth. But I think Mew and Top does embody quite well that idea of like we are our own enemies, and especially Mew, because if you think about it, he gets together with Top, and it feels like a sort of dream come true because it's his first love. He's like in university, he's still this very shy and innocent guy and all the stuff. But then because he's very like reserved in a sense, Top ends up like cheating on him, right? Especially with a friend. That do not do that, okay? Do not do that, guys. This like only if there is one thing about OnlyFriends and OnlyFriends Jermon is I think this is the things you should not do in your life kind of guide. This is like they should have called it things not to do in your life. So Top cheats on Mew with Boston, and when Top tries to apologize and mention that back then they were not actually like together and everything, and it was like a bit confused together, it was they were still navigating this new relationship of them. And he was like, okay, but now I only love you and I promise to like never do that kind of stuff again. That's what I remember. Pardon me if this is wrong, but this is what I remember from the series. And then instead of just accepting it and try to go over it together, Mew decides to just become the worst person ever. He decides to become what Top was in some sense. Like he decided to become the kind of person that hurt him in the first place. So again, do not do that. Doesn't I do not approve. It's not approved, but he goes for that very self-destructive behavior instead of going for the better option of like going like getting over it and like trying to work it out together. He just like falls right into that hole and goes all the way down the rabbit hole of self-destruction. Like he just decides to like I don't know, I don't remember, I don't think he sleeps around that much, but he decides to sort of date Ray, although he's not really in love with him because he's doing that especially to hurt Top. But then he's also hurting himself because he does not really like Ray either, because he likes Top, so he should be with Top, but he's sort of forcing himself to be with Ray to hurt Top, and Top is hurt. But this is so messed up once again. Like the relationship in this series are crazy. But just to show that he's going for the self-destructive behavior instead of just going for the better option. And this again applies to many other characters as well, because Ray is in love with Mew, but there is Sen who's in love with Ray, and Ray, instead of just letting go of Mew, because he already knows that Mew does not like him. Okay, Ray is definitely aware that Mew is not into him, but still he tries his chance. He's trying because he's like, oh well, what if, what if? And so he tries it out instead of just trying with Sand, who actually loves him. Like if he just gave a chance to Sand in the first place, all of this situation with Mew wouldn't have happened, probably, because he would have realized his own feelings for Sand like earlier. The same goes with Ray, with Mew. It also goes, I mean, I think I don't even have to mention it that it goes well with Boston as well, but it also goes with Nick, who is trying to get with Boston so many times and fails, because obviously Boston is not into like steady and settled relationship. So he goes over and over again hoping that something will happen, that Boston will choose him, and he never does. So again, self-destructive, because from the very beginning, when you see what kind of person Boston is, you know that he's not going to settle for anyone. So again, they're all very self-destructive. I guess like even Top, because his decision of cheating on Mew in the first few episodes, first part of the series, that is very self-destructive. He could have said no, but he just was like, oh, okay, well, let's do it one more time. What, like, how bad could it possibly be? And it ended up being very, very bad for him. So again, if he just did not agree to end up in that situation because he chose to agree to sleep with Boston, right? So if he did not choose that, he wouldn't have had all these problems with Mew. So again, very self-destructive because he knew from the beginning that it was a bad idea, but he still decided to do it because he was like, well, if Mew never knows, nothing's gonna happen. Bad decisions only. And so if you think about it, this is how I think the two seasons are very similar to each other. Because if you think about it, Dean is like the equivalent of Mew. Like something bad happened between him and Jack in the past. We never really know exactly what happened. It was never really developed in the series. This is one thing I forgot to mention earlier, but this is one thing I did not appreciate. I wanted to know exactly what happened, and they did not show us. Bad. Very, very bad. But so he could have just gotten back with Jack at some point, but again, shit happened. He just decides to flirt with Arnold and flirt with whoever else, I don't remember the name. He just decides to like keep on his sort of like playboy attitude. He's like, I'm not gonna give in to him. When he could just let go of that freaking attitude and get back with the love of his life. Again, very self-destructive. Actually, when I think of Jack, maybe he's the only character that does not have such a self-destructive behavior, except for getting back with Jean. Because actually, I think that was the self-destructive behavior for Jack, because when you look at it, you see that they are never really happy together. So it works for both of them, but specifically for Jack, because apart from this, I don't see anything specifically self-destructive in his life. Like he's pursuing his dream, he doesn't really flirt around or anything. He's just like, yeah, he has a bit of an attitude. I will agree to that, but he does not have any very specific like self-destructive behavior other than that. So basically for him, being in a relationship with Dean is the most self-destructive thing he can do. And especially at the end, when they meet again after many years, he decides to get back with him, although they both agreed to not do that again because they just knew that they were not, like, not that they're not good together, but they know that being together hurts them more than being away from each other, I think. That is my personal view on their relationship and their situation, given all the series that we had before that. So when it comes to Rome and Raffi, I think everything is pretty clear about how self-destructive they are. Like Raffi keeps going for Jack. So again, oh, I think we've seen this pattern before. Who's that? Ray? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is the exact same pattern. We have like in the first season we had Ray who was in love with Mew, kept going to him, although he knew Mew had no feelings towards him. We have the exact same pattern in season 2 with Raffi going to Jack when he knows that Jack only loves Din. Exact same pattern. Copy paste. So this, and in the same way, Rome has a very self-destructive behavior because instead of just assuming his feelings from the start, at first he agrees to this sort of like sex friend kind of relationship with Raffi, and this does not make him happy. Like for quite some times throughout the series, he just agrees to whatever Raffi wants from him, I guess. And this was very self-destructive. The moment he decides to reveal his feeling, when we see how Raffi responds to that, it definitely hurts Rome so bad. So bad. So again, there is definitely some self-destructive behavior in him. And again, when Raffi comes back to him towards the end, although it did not last long, but for some time he just plays hard to get when we know that the only thing he wants is to get back with him. So that was also very self-destructive. And Joss and Gawain, I'm trying to think about their characters, but their characters felt a bit out of place, honestly, because they had this sort of like very cute and fluffy romance which did not fit in the universe of Only Friends, in my opinion. Um, and especially in their case, when I mentioned earlier about the unnecessary drama, I meant them. Literally them. Like their whole situation, like both drama that happens to them in the series is first about two paying Arnold when like nobody else is being paid to play in the play. So this was very, very unnecessary. Like it was just a miscommunication. It happens. Like they talk it out. It again, the drama did not last long because of course it was coming out of nowhere. It was a bit of like an unasked for, unnecessary. Yeah, there was not much justification to this drama, so of course it did not last long. And the second drama is the exact same problem because it comes like when Arnold and Dean like go into the forest and they're drunk and they almost kiss, but they do not kiss. Again, big detail, important detail. They do not kiss, but someone films them and spread the video. And when this happens, Tua gets so angry because he just got into a relationship with Arnold, and he's like, "Oh, you cheated on me and stuff." And I'm like, "Well, in the video, you don't see clearly if they kiss each other or not." But Arnold tells him that they did not do anything. They did not do anything, and given their brand new relationship, I do not understand why Tua was so upset about it and why he did not trust Arnold better. So the way Tua got so upset and decided to just like cut ties with Arnold, and the way he also invited Boston back, because yeah, Boston was part of second season as well. I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but he was there. He was there, and the way Tua like just called for Boston when things got worse for him was very, very self-destructive. The way he's almost pushed himself onto Boston, the only time that Boston did not Boston, we all agreed on that. The only time when he actually did not really like give in when someone was actually coming onto him was this specific moment, and this was like the most self-destructive behavior ever from Tua, because we know that he does not love Boston anymore. We also know that he does not want to cheat on Arnold because obviously he's not that kind of person. Tua is very like innocent, very sensitive. Yeah, he's that sort of like very soft boy kind of vibe. So obviously it does not goes with him to just slip around, right? So all those situation was very, very self-destructive. And I wouldn't say that Arnold had a specific self-destructive behavior. I guess the most self-destructive things about him was that he did not realize that everything, like all his flirting and like fake relationship with Dean for the series was gonna lead up to some drama. Maybe his like ignorance is the sort of red flag in him. But apart from that, I think his character was not that deep, honestly. So I think that's why maybe there is nothing very specifically like self-destructive about it. But overall, except for like one or two characters, every single character, even the side ones, because if you think in season 2, if you think about Pete, he's damn self-destructive. Like the idea of releasing this video when he knows damn well that it's not gonna end up well for him. The way he just like, there was also something about like money, the club money that he used for himself or something. So again, everybody is a red flag. Everybody is a red flag. Everybody is so self-destructive. But what I want to point out is that they are being like self-destructive to themselves, meaning it's not anybody else that is bringing the self-destructive behavior to them. It is not due to anybody else's action that they end up being like having this sort of like self-destructive effect. It is really just them with themselves. Like they are hurting themselves, each and every single one of them. And that is why I wanted to associate this idea of like self-destruction with we are our own enemy, because we often don't realize the how much, like how strict we are with ourselves, how much we hurt ourselves, and like all the wounds that sometimes we think we have from some other people actually comes from us. Like we are just like pushing that onto ourselves. So now that I'm done talking about the series, it's time to share the anecdote about my life and how I relate to this life lesson, and sort of like tips to overcome it to some extent. I will try my best to share them with you. You might think like, okay, what is self-destructive about you? I know it doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like it because it was actually more of a long time ago when I was in high school. Actually, I think it started in middle school, but when I was in high school, this is what I remember most clearly. I had a very self destructive behavior because I would, first of all, stay friend with people who did not meant well for me, meaning people who would look down on me, people who would judge me, um, people who just did not appreciate me for who I was. Other than that, I would say that the most self destructive things that I did to myself was not appreciate myself, because others not appreciating you is one thing, but you not appreciating yourself is another. I think that back then the lack of self confidence that I had is really what destroyed me the most, and it destroyed me for years and years to come. I did not know it back then, obviously I did not know it, and it just seemed normal to me to have that kind of behavior. But back then I would not like any single thing about me. I did not like the way I looked. I did not like my voice. I did not like the work I was doing, whether it was like for school or like personal stuff. I liked drawing. I still do. But back then I used to hate my drawing. I used to think that I was drawing so bad. Well, I was at first. I'm not gonna lie. I was at first. I was very bad at drawing at first, but you know, practice makes perfect. So, but this is something I did not realize until very recently. Like, although I kept hearing about it, I couldn't see it for myself because I was like, I'm just not good and I'm never going to be good in my entire life. That's how I used to think. So this kind of behavior was very, very self destructive. But the thing I want to touch upon, and which is why I also added that quote of like, we are our own enemy, is that this self destruction came from within. And although for many, many years I thought that the sadness and all this depression and bad thoughts that I had were coming because other people did not like me. This is how I used to see myself. I used to see myself as someone who was not liked by anybody. And while it does not matter now, even if nobody likes me, I don't really care. But back then, it was so important to me to feel loved. I did not feel loved by anybody, even by my friends, even by my family. I just felt like everyone was pretending with me, and because of that, um, I started to think that it was because of other people, because other people did not like me as I wanted them to. This was why I was lacking self confidence. I was like, no, but if people like me, then I'm gonna be confident, because if other people like me, then I can like myself too. You know, this is how I used to think, and this is so self-destructive. Again, do not recommend. I do not recommend. Maybe I can be part of Only Friends season 3. I don't know. But this was very, very self-destructive for me, and I realize it now, which is why I want to share that with you, because again, I know this can be very triggering, like triggering topics and sensitive issues, but I want to share them because I believe I am not the only one going through that, and I want to show you that you can get better, first of all, and as you get better, you will be able to talk about it as I'm doing now. Like, I want to show you that it is not taboo, like, it is not something you should keep inside. It is okay to exteriorize it. It is okay to share it with others because it is part of you, it is part of your story. So I think it is totally fine. And honestly, other sort of triggering topics are probably going to come up in the future episode of this podcast. I will put trigger warning better than this time. Obviously, I will put trigger warning next time, but obviously some kind of triggering issues like this are going to come up because I feel like they are also part of life for many of us. So I think it is really important to share it together, and especially in relation to BL, because I don't think anybody got that creative with those kind of topics before. So I think it is a very interesting way to put it and to look at it when you compare it to a series, which is usually something you relate to, but you also look up to. So sometimes what you see in the series, you're like, oh, okay, but this does not happen the same way in my life. Like, I'm not a character in a series, so things don't happen like this in real life. And this is specifically the point of this podcast, to show you that although things does not happen in the exact same way, to some extent it is not that far away from us. It is pretty close actually to our daily life. So coming back to the topic of self-destruction, um, I think that to get over the self-destructive behavior, you have to realize that you are being your enemy, that you are the only thing um, like putting walls onto your own path. Like nothing else is blocking you but yourself. If you look at it, like, of course, there are some external factors sometimes, like money or like your location, your surroundings. Obviously, those kind of stuff um, do take some role. Like it does play a role, it does play a part in some of the things that happens to you, and maybe some of like your limitation. But many times when we feel like we are very like so damn stuck in a situation, it is usually because of ourselves, either because we don't take that step to move forward, either because we just think we're not capable of it, either because we just look down on ourselves. But most of the time, when you feel like you're really, really stuck and you really cannot move forward and there is nothing you can do and everything feels so desperate, when you're really like all the way down there, it's usually because of you. And it is, I know that it is really hard to hear. Honestly, it is not something that is easy to say either. I'm not gonna lie. It is something that is really hard to understand and to accept, because nobody wants to hurt themselves to some extent. Like nobody really wants to be hurt, right? We all want to be happy, we all want to be okay. So it is really sad to think that sometimes we are the one hurting ourselves the most. But it is important to hear, and it is important to realize as well, because once you realize that you are stopping yourself from reaching that happiness that you're looking for, then you can move forward. Then you can actually take that step towards that happiness that you want. The bad habits like self-destruction are the ones that are harder to get rid of, because, as I said, it is a habit. And it is so hard to get rid of something that you're so used to. So I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. I'm not saying that it's going to happen in like a day or a week or even a month. It could take months. It could take years for you to get over it. But slowly but surely, if you try to take little step after little step, and if you keep reminding yourself that you are the only thing that is blocking you right now, that is stopping you right now, then I guarantee that you will definitely come a long way. No matter how long it takes, you will get a long way. Because I decided that at some point I didn't want to be sad anymore, but the only thing that kept me sad was me. So once you realize that, you can hopefully move forward and change and reach happiness and joy and happy life. Yeah, I think this is sort of my take on this life lesson. So I'm not sure if there is any actual advice that I included in there, except for taking that step. And I know it can be hard. The thing is that depending on your own life and your own situation, your own personality, I do not know what that specific first step looks like for you. But whatever it is, I hope that you do take it and that you do move forward, and that I will hear from you again when everything is better, because this is all I'm wishing for every single one of you that is watching this video right now. So I think that is how I relate the self-destruction to OnlyFriends German, and then to my own life. I hope that you could also relate to what I said. I hope that maybe it was eye-opening for you. And I hope that this video somehow could help you, or like, I don't know, if it did anything to make you feel better, then I'm happy. Then my job is done. That is what I think. That is what I think in regard to this episode. So yeah, that is the end. I hope you enjoyed this new episode. If you did, you can like, you can share, you can comment, you can do anything that you want. You can do anything that you want to show me that you enjoyed. You can comment anything. You can share it with some friends, some other people who like BL, or some other people who struggle with those kind of issue, and who you think might just feel better hearing those words. Yeah, that is the end of this episode. I hope you liked it. And don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss the next episode, which comes in 2 weeks. And I will see you then. And cut.